we explain later, truncations and wildcards. And subject searching, you use usually mesh or medical subject headings, and subject headings added to articles on Medline. So for example, in this PICO later, so you have people with type 2 diabetes, you also have to list down, for example, the GLP-1 receptor agonist that you know, or maybe you have discussed, or maybe you search from the Google Scholar, or things, the drugs that are available in National Formulary of Malaysia. So you want to list down together with this so that you don't miss this. So this is when I talk about Boolean operators. Hold on. Excuse me. So Boolean operators is actually a simple words or symbols used to combine or exclude keywords in searches or logical statements, helping to refine results. So most of the time when you use databases or scientific databases, you have to use Boolean operators in order for you to get or refine your results or refine your search strategy. So the three main Boolean operators that we commonly used are or, and not. For or, it is mainly to broaden the search by including results that contain any of the terms. So if you combine one terms with another terms using or, you are actually broaden your search strategy. So that's what Alia gets. So what from 20,000, she added more and add or, she gets 60,000, for example. So that's the use of or. And is when you want to narrow the search by including results that contain all the specified terms in which we want to use, for example, cancer and screening. It will the results will actually include both words, those articles that include cancer and screening together. So for example, from 50,000 that you've got, the first search is on using cancer, but when you add screening and you put it will come down to maybe 30,000 or 25,000, because the articles that only contain the words cancer and screening will be included or will be filtered for you to search further. Okay. And not is actually to exclude results containing a specific term. For example, you put in the diabetes, but not type 1. Okay, so diabetes, not type or, but this one has to be used carefully. I usually do not use not because it will restrict a lot of things. Sometimes you might miss what you want to look for if you use not. So I mainly use or and only. So and slash is for all subheadings. Truncations means to use for example for asterisk. It can be used to search for word variations. For example, gene, you put asterisk. You can search for genes, genetic, general. So it can be this is what we call as a truncations. And dollar signs is adding a number after a dollar, can limit the truncation to a maximum number of characters. For example, gene $4 will retrieve gene, genetics, but not generation. Why? Because generation has six letters after that. Okay, so the others, because it's still within 4, still be included when you use a gene $4. Okay. And this one, wildcard, is substitute for this one is hashtag is substitute for exactly one character. For example, in woman, we have woman with E and woman with A. So when you do your search, you just put wom, what is it called? Hashtag N. So you can search woman and woman. Okay. And then question mark is actually if you have like a British British spelling for pediatric, you put here P question mark E pediatric, and then you will get pediatric or pediatric. Okay. Adjacency search rule is a little bit complex in a way that adjacent will find the words, for example, emergency ADJ department will find the words emergency and department in that order, in which emergency department with emergency ADJ department will only have find you emergency and department in that order. But ADJ1, it search for both terms can be next to each other. So for example, emergency department and department of emergency. So if you are looking at emergency department and department of emergency, you put emergency ADJ1 department. You will find for both, okay? And .tw is for free text search in just the title and abstract fields. Okay, so this is the common Boolean operators and truncation and the wildcards that we usually use in or bin line. So just to get a clearer picture on how Boolean operators or and and work. So you combine terms with or, for example, the P just now, diabetes mellitus or type 2 DM. So either term can be present. If you put your search as diabetes mellitus first, it will find this much of articles. And you put type 2 DM, you'll find this much of articles. But if you diabetes mellitus or type 2 DM, you will get this much. Okay? And what about and? It combined when combined terms with and, for example, diabetes mellitus and glucagon-like peptide 1, both terms must present. So you have here diabetes mellitus and glucagon-like peptide in red circles. If you use and here, only these articles will be captured by the scientific databases. Okay, because you use the both terms must present in the articles or the titles for you to filter further. Okay, so if you want to broaden your search, you use or. If you want to narrow down your search, you use and. Okay. Okay, so another example. So you have P, diabetes mellitus, or type 2 diabetes mellitus, or type 2 DM. So in the same group here of P, you use or. In the same group of I, you can group glucagon-like peptide or GLP-1. In the same group of O, outcomes, glycemic control or safety or adverse events. This will capture everything in here, okay? But when you want to combine between the two, means you want to look at the diabetes mellitus, looking at glucagon peptide only, and the outcomes in glycemic control, you put N between these three groups, okay? The most common one is we put N in between P and 1. So what we do is that we combine those in P first, we combine those in I first, and then we put N in between these two. So you will get a more focused questions or more focused search strategies actually. Okay, and because remember when I tell you that you have to be transparent and you have to be systematic. So this is a good practice in which you have to formulate your PICO table. So don't worry about this. I will give you the soft copy for this one so that you can have we can practice later when we do the exercise next week. So this is a PICO table contains PICO, P-I-C-O, and then the initial term. For example, just now that we talk about type 2 DM, so the initial term is type 2 DM, and then we will search the mesh or the subject headings in the scientific databases of the type 2 DM. So sometimes they're not using type 2 diabetes mellitus. Sometimes they are using only diabetes mellitus in the mesh or the scientific databases. So we have to follow that one. And then if there's any text words that you want to put in, for example, just now I said about using the .tw. So for example, you want T2DM as your text word, and you can put that as well. So that's about the formulating the PICO table. Next one, we talk about grey literature. In this grey literature, is actually grey literature refers to the research outputs that is not controlled by commercial publishers. So you know that our journals or peer-reviewed journals, especially BMJ, and Nature, JAMA, it's all by the commercial publishers. But grey literature it is not controlled by commercial publishers, and often it is not peer-reviewed, but it's still a valuable evidence, and it is a key source, especially in when you are doing HTA, public health and systematic reviews, because it helps in reducing the publication bias. Why publication bias? Because most of the articles or most of the journals actually they always focus on the positive outcomes. So those articles of research with positive outcomes usually will get published, but those with negative outcomes, it's quite difficult to get published. So that is why sometimes if the grey literature helps in terms of finding the unpublished articles or unpublished research. Okay, so yep, some of the grey literature includes are the conference abstracts or proceedings. So some of the conference they have the published the proceedings, but some are not. So these are the things that you want to look into when you find when you maybe you look at your articles, it's not that much that you've got from the scientific databases. Maybe you have to go and look into the conference abstract or proceedings. Thesis and dissertation, it is part of the grey literature as well. So clinical trial registries and databases, governmental and institutional databases, for example, research reports, statistic, the ones that in Department of Statistics Malaysia, that is one of the grey literature as well. Okay. Agency and organization website, for example, NICE, NIH Malaysia, NMH websites, international organization reports, WHO, World Bank, and specifically dedicated grey literature repositories, Open Grey, GreyNet, focus dissertation thesis. So Open Grey and GreyNet, it is free to use. You can search it if you want, and but you have to really look into the one that you the titles or the components that you want to look, because it contains everything, not only healthcare, it also engineering, agriculture, science and technology, education, and all. So you have to look at the suitable ones later. Mhm. And then when you start doing your search, after you're doing your search, you have to save your research and search as well. So you can save it in database itself, Ovid Medline, PubMed. So you have to register an account with the database. It is free. For example, if you want to register with PubMed, and then you can just go and register your account there. Just put in your email and your password and your username. Or if you are already familiar with any reference manager, EndNote, Mendeley, or Zotero, you can save your search in your reference manager. But unfortunately, if you export your search into your reference manager, it will only contain the citation and references plus minus abstract, but not the PDF or the full text. You have to somehow go through again the titles that you've got and then find the PDF full text manually. Okay. Or if in EndNote, you can put there is a button to look at the find full text in EndNote. And old school style, you can export it in your Words or Excel or PDF. So this is going to the fun part, which we'll do next week. So our first step is to prepare your Pico table. If you want to prepare by yourself first, then you can do it, or else I can give it to Alia, and then you can, or you can email me to get the Pico table. But it is easy to do; it's not that difficult. You can use Words anyway. And then the second step is open your Ovid Medline using your organization or university library. Those from MOH, I think the virtual library from MOH, it has an Ovid, but you still have to look at the Ovid Medline in order for us to do the exercise next week. Third step is to create a personal account. So if you are using Ovid Medline, then you click here on the My Account, and then you register with a personal account name and then password, email address, and then voila, you can start using it. You can start using your account in the Ovid Medline database itself. And then fourth step is to go to search tab and make sure it is advanced search. Yeah. And map them to the subject heading or mesh. Okay. Yeah. So don't worry, we are going to do this next week. So this is the introductory. And if you couldn't get the steps later, don't worry. I've asked Alia to perhaps get the recording or prepare the recording for the steps next week, because it's quite a lot of steps. It's quite tricky, and it's good if you have you can refer to the video later for you to practice. Okay. So in summary, for the first part, step 1 is to formulate a focus question. Step 2 is to determine the search engines and databases. Ovid Medline is the best for me. And alternatively, you can use PubMed. If you are familiar with Ovid Medline and PubMed, Web of Science and Scopus is quite easy to do. And then turn the focus question into search strategy. Run an advanced search on databases, preferably more than one source, and save the search database and reference manager. So this is some of the references on the search strategy. May I know if there's any question on this first part on the search strategy? Questions? Let me check the chat.
Thanks so much for sharing this, Tanya. I think there's a hand that's been raised.
Okay.
Or do you want them to allow them to just unmute themselves or type the question in the chat box? All right. If anyone have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and just ask Dr. Hanin.
Oh, okay. Here's a Mira. Mira saying that I may have missed few slides in front. Do you mind to show them? Okay. Which one, Mira? If you want the slides for your reference, maybe I can give it to you later. I will give you my email, so you can email me and ask for my PDF of the slides so they can refer to. Do we need to formulate question first for next week, the very first one? Okay. Mira, I think for next one, for the hands-on purposes, I will use the research question that I've already prepared, so that we can do the search easily, smoothly. So let me use my research question first. And if you have any question or you want me to check your research questions next week, then just shout. Okay. Sangeeta, Prof. Prof lah. Belum Prof lagi. I could not join from the beginning. Sorry, we'll get the recording later. Maybe you can ask Alia after this, because I think it is recorded, but I'm not sure whether it can be shared or not. Okay. Sudhir. Hi, Dr. Thanks for the question. I would like to ask if we were to use Spider, would it be the similar step? Yes, it will be the similar step. For Spider, for example, in Pico, when you want to search for the search terms, actually, what my best practice is, I only combine the first two, P and I. Similar with Spider, you only look at the intervention and setting and maybe the population. Okay. So let's see how the research question is, and then we can discuss further after this. So when we do the hands-on next week, then you will be a little bit clear on that one. Okay. Hidayah, can explain again on the transparent? I have lost a bit. Okay. Transparent. Why it is transparent is because when we do a literature search or a systematic search, especially when you are doing systematic reviews, transparency in terms of how you do your search, who did what, and everything is a criteria. So who do what, and you have to document and report it. So it is part of the methodology if you want to publish a paper. So especially if you are secretive about how you get into your articles or your search, the topics or the articles that you've got, people question you actually whether you are exhaustive enough. So if you're not transparent, everything above here is questionable. So that is why it is very important for you to be transparent in terms of what you do when you do your search. Okay. Amiza, for next week, we will be using Ovid or PubMed. I will be using Ovid because I prefer Ovid because it is more systematic compared to PubMed. Dayang, doctor, can we use O and N together or one at a time? Systematically, my practice, I use one at a time. I will use OR first, and then I will combine everything with AND so that you don't miss everything. So you don't miss anything. So you, in a search strategy, you usually combine OR first, and then when you want to combine P and I, you use AND. Okay. Okay, I don't know how to identify research gaps or determine the field of study. What should I do? Oh, ini bahaya. Research gaps and determine the field of study is something that is memang masalah semua orang. And I think if you want to identify research gaps, okay, lepas ni I will go into the how to read articles properly. So in there, for example, in identify research gaps, actually when you read the paper, you look at certain part of that paper in order for you to identify research gaps. For example, you look at the introduction part, why does the author conduct the study? So that is one of the gaps that he or she finds. And then another one is you look at the discussion section. In discussion section, they will have a future research should do this. There are recommendations for future research because the current research that they did does not find what does not address what the limitations or the gaps in there. So if you are looking for research gaps, it is not enough for you to only read 1 or 5 papers in order for you to find research gaps. It has to be more, and you have to look at the certain parts of the articles, introduction parts, the bottom one, and also the discussion part in order for you to find the research gaps. Okay, Fatima, how to use .tw. Okay. Actually, when I talk about MASH, for example, MASH is the standardized words or terms that are being used in the scientific databases. For example, in Ovid Medline, for type 2 diabetes mellitus, the MASH word is type 2 diabetes mellitus / So itu adalah the MASH words. But if you want to put in T2DM, it is not a MASH word. So you have to put it as a text word. So what you have to do in the search later is that you put T2DM.tw in order for the for the database or search engines to find that T2DM as well. So T2DM.tw. So I will show you next week on how we use it. Virus as a mental preparation. So RAM. For beginner, how long roughly you'll need to complete systematic literature review and how many author should be working on the systematic review and how we divide task? Oh, panjang soalan ni. Okay. Systematic review ni kita nak bagi top part 3 nanti sebenarnya. Tapi for your mental preparation, for a proper systematic review to complete it, depends on your skills. Since you are beginner, expect your systematic review to be completed within 6 to 8 months. Okay? Untuk you cari itu. Me, I can complete it in 3 months tu dah siap writing semua. Or in urgent way, or if I really focus on things that I really want to look into, then it can be done in 1 month. Okay? But for a beginner, expect it to be 6 to 8 months. Don't rush and do it properly, because kalau tidak nanti you tak jumpa apa yang you nak cari dalam you punya literature review tu. And how many authors should be work on systematic review and how we divide the tasks. Oh, okay. If you're a student, then you have to put your supervisor as the one that will check your stats and the terms that you are using. So basically, systematic review cannot be done by one person only. It has to be checked by others as well. So minimum number of people that work in your systematic review should be 2 people, minimum, and maximum as many as you want. How do you divide the tasks is that the most important one is the person if it is if you are a student, the person that has to do the search strategy, the research, the evidence synthesis, the writing part. So nak divide task to depends on how many people you have lah. But as a student, you have to do everything. Okay, you nak divide, you nak ajak kawan you join for taking your titles, taking your search strategy, boleh. You can ajak. Dividing the task is actually by experience, I think. And for example, if you have information specialists, those who are masters or quite expert in searching the articles, you don't have to do the searching. So you can give the task to him or to her. So like in Matas, we have an information specialist. So we give the searching task to them, but we discuss with them what we want to search. So dividing the task, it needs a discussion lah. So if you're still unclear about that, or if you're not really sure how to divide the task, you can contact me, nanti kita boleh discuss. Hafizah, panjang. What going if we don't have the access to database of interest, Embase? Kalau kita tak dapat database tu, kita akan bersusah payah lah. Sebabnya kalau you tak ada access, memang you tak boleh dapat tu. I don't encourage you to go to the Sci-Hub ke ataupun the pasar gelap or the black market of getting the articles, because it's unethical. So kalau you tak dapat, maybe you can help from your library to find for ways lah on how to do it. Or maybe if you have any other counterparts or friends in other universities that have access to that, you can discuss with her. Can you use her account, ataupun can she do the the searching for you, maybe next week or something. But most of the university selalunya ada lah Embase punya, Netline and Embase punya access. Hospital Shah Alam ni, susah sikit, tapi try tanya NIH, because most of the time NIH ada access to all the important databases. For prevalence and determinant study, you only have the P component of the PICO. There is really prevalence and determinant. Is that okay? Common, sebabnya prevalence and determinant study is not using PICO, because you are studying it. It's common. So many you have to find the outcome is actually the prevalence. Diane, nanti you explain sikit boleh tak on the P component tu. Ocean, how many articles are needed at minimum to identify research gaps? Depends. Kalau study tu yang dah banyak established, I mean studies that has been done a lot, then you might have to read a lot. But if you're looking at the research gaps, try to find the research, the articles that is published in the last 3 years. Kalau ni 2025, so 2023, 2024, and 2025. Kalau you cari yang 2020 punya, it is no more research gaps. So try to find the last 3 years punya, in order for you to find a solid research gaps. But remember juga research gaps ni does not mean one thing saja. The research gaps can be in terms of the methodological gaps. It can be in terms of the data gaps. It can be in terms of the implementation gaps. It can be in terms of the study design gaps. For example, in my study, for example, this investment, it has been done a lot in other countries, but the gap is in getting the decision-making framework, in which many studies are using PBMA, but there are no scoring. So what I did is that the research gaps in applicable for Malaysia is using MCDAs. So that is one of the decision-making framework, as well as the methodological framework, methodological gaps. So don't confine yourself only research gaps to satu component saja. It can be many. Show back the slide that shows the signs for the words. Truncations. Boolean operator. This one ke, Liana? Okay. Saya tunjuk kat sini ya. Sebab dia tak ada soalan, dia tunjuk je. Is Ovid Medline free? Ovid Medline is not free. So it has to be subscribed. So usually university akan ada a subscription to Medline via Ovid. I'm not sure, you have to check with your university lah. Previously, virtual library MOH ada subscription to that. But don't worry, kalau you tak ada access to Ovid Medline, you can use PubMed Medline juga. The differences when you are using PubMed and Ovid Medline is that about 10% differences saja. 10 to 15% differences in terms of the number of the articles, number of hits. As for the resources, can we use data from web page, for example, number of cancer cases from WHO web page as our reference? Or it has to be, boleh. Web page boleh as long as you cite it properly. Okay, WHO web page boleh. That is part of the grey literature, remember? So masa I buat my thesis pun, I use a lot of WHO reports, international organization punya sources as the to get the prevalence and all. Okay. Will there be an email asking? Will there be an email reminder for the next session? Alia will remind you on that. Maybe you can look at the her Facebook lah nanti. Okay, I think I have answered everything first. So okay ke semua? Can we continue with the second one?
Boleh, Doktor.
Alright. Banyak kita ni. Kita dah pukul berapa yang dapat. So now, this is the struggle that most people are facing lah. So don't worry, I also face the same thing. Okay. So now I want to share with you on how to read a scientific article effectively. So the objective of this session is to understand the purpose of reading scientific papers, because sometimes you don't know why you are reading it. You're reading it for the purpose of getting some information, but somehow you lost in between because you don't have the exact purpose, the focus on why you are reading it. And then I will share with you the techniques for efficient and critical reading, because reading is not just reading for completing the task of reading the articles. You have to get something from the articles, and in order for you to get the maximum benefits from reading the articles, you have to really know how to find the critical information and develop strategies to extract, evaluate, and record research evidence. So this is about the literature metrics. Okay, so I'm sure many of you will have this experience. You open a paper and you felt lost after the abstract. You baca the title, okay lagi. You baca the abstract, dah start berkerut. Ni belum baca yang bawah-bawah lagi, baru baca abstract, you start berkerut. So this is common if you are just about to start reading it. Okay, but it is not possible for you to understand on how to read it, because you have to know the tips. So this is one of the, I like this quote from my teacher dulu lah, in Birmingham. So she said that reading a scientific paper without a strategy is like jumping into a pool without knowing how to swim. You will struggle to stay afloat in a sea of information. You will lost in a lot of information until you sampaikan you think, what's the purpose of reading it anyway? So baca title saja, baca abstract saja, tiba you okay lah, dah ngantuk dah. Belum apa-apa lagi dah ngantuk. So that is why you have to have a strategy and you have to focus on what you want to gain from reading the articles. Okay. So, okay, why we read scientific articles? For background knowledge, for example, narrative reviews or guidelines, and for you to start finding the proposals or doing your proposals, for example. And maybe you are struggling to come up with your own methodology for your proposal. So you're reading the articles in order for you to copy or to replicate the methodology of that study, or that article. So that is one of the way for you to get a validated method in order for you to conduct your study. And maybe if you are doing meta-analysis or citations as critics, so you are reading the articles for data and results. For me, because I'm also doing economic modeling, so I read scientific articles in order for me to get the data and parameters in order for me to use in my economic modeling. And the next one is for critical appraisal, especially if you are looking into the projects or the reviews that in which you are looking at assessing the evidence of quality of the papers. So this is common when you are doing the clinical practice guidelines, for example. So the type of articles I've shared with you before on the different types of the articles, primary source, secondary source, and the tertiary source. So articles one are the anatomy media. So I'm sure you are familiar with this anatomy. IMRAD. So IMRAD introduction is why the study was done, methods, how it was done, results, what was found, and discussion, what it means. So in order for you first to look at the for example, nak berkenalan dengan articles tu, you look at the titles, you look at the abstracts first. So you baca dulu. For example, this is a paper that I published last year on online survey of the stakeholder perspective on disinvestment of low value healthcare interventions. So it's standard. You can abstract your other objectives, which is part of the introduction, why you do the study, methods, how you do it, how it was done, the results, so basically what was found, and also perhaps the important findings if you're looking only at the abstracts. And discussion is actually on the full text, but not here in the abstract. Abstract usually look at the conclusion, the objective, methods, results, and conclusion. Okay. If you have this article, tengok juga pada keywords here. The keywords on this investment. So for example, in my article, I use stakeholder engagement as one of the keywords, resource allocation, healthcare surveys. So these keywords will somehow determine whether this study is actually what you're looking for. Kalau ada things yang you rasa kena dengan your research, then keep on reading, okay? So this is a step-by-step reading strategy for beginners lah. So pre-read, you skim through, read the article, abstract, keywords and figures. Ask, is this relevant to my topic of question? Kalau you baca abstract, you rasa macam, oh, I nak cari pasal type 2 diabetes, but this study is talking about the type 1 diabetes. I don't want it. Stop reading. Okay, jangan buang masa. Kalau katalah you baca, pada abstract you tengok, oh, actually I'm looking at the, for example, postmenopausal woman, cancer in postmenopausal women, for example. But the article is talking about the generally in patients, in women in general, not postmenopausal. You might want to read further because mungkin the postmenopausal tu termasuk dalam some of the subgroup population or subgroup analysis. So in women in general, try to read further, okay? So you pre-read dulu, skim through dulu, jangan pening-pening lagi, tanya dulu question, is this relevant to my topic or question, okay? And the next step is to do a deep read. When you are doing a deep read, you focus on methods, population, the design, the outcomes, identify the biases that you can think of, and then evaluate the results. You look at the key tables, effect size, statistical significance, annotate while reading. So you want to do some notes, highlight. Kalau you baca pada end note, you boleh highlight kan? You highlight the variables being used, highlight the limitations that are being recorded or reported in the articles. Okay, so this is one of the way, or this is what we mean with a deep read. And then critical appraisal. So then now in critical appraisal, you have to have a curiosity in which you need to ask about the validity of it. So in terms of the study's validity, kita ada internal validity dan juga external validity. So internal validity is actually, does the research being conducted in proper way for it to be, for us to trust the results. So internal validity is about how it is conducted. Kalau dia buat, kalau the method is good, dan kita lebih cenderung ataupun lebih keen untuk trust the results or use the results. External validity is actually, does the findings of the results generalizable to my settings or to my research? Okay, so external validation is about generalizability of the findings to your questions or to your context. Okay, so critical appraisals need it has to be based on the tools. So the common tools that we use are CASP, or Critical Appraisal Skills Program. So CASP checklist is free to use. So maybe you want to look at it later. Tapi nanti I can focus further later when we are doing a part 3 in systematic reviews, or consort, or risk of bias, or stroke checklist. And in this part, you ask the question, is the research question clear? Is the method appropriate? Are results interpreted correctly? And can I trust these findings for my context? Okay. And then you synthesize the finding from that article and apply it to your projects. Okay. You summarize key points in your own words. You link with your conceptual framework or research questions, and you record it in Reference Manager and Note or Mendeley with notes or grouping. Kalau sempat nanti I will show you on how I group my work in EndNotes. Yeah? So, and then strategic reading. So I think this is just a repetition actually. So I always use a 3-pass method. So first pass is for you to get the general idea. So you baca santai-santai dulu. You baca and then get the general idea what is the article is about. And then second pass is understand the structure. So you want to look at the structure of the articles. You want to look at the results. You want to look at the relations between the results and also the objectives. And also you look at the discussion as well. So third pass is deep comprehension and critics. So this is when you require skills on how to read properly. And then you have to manage cognitive loads. In the first pass or the first go, never read line by line. And you have to prioritize relevance over completeness. I know you want to finish up reading the articles. Kalau tak habis baca articles tu, you rasa macam tak tenteram hidup you kan. Tapi that's not the smart way of doing things lah. So prioritize relevance over completeness. Walaupun you tak habis baca articles tu, you can still get the things or the information that you need in order for you to complete your work. Okay. And then skim through the figures and tables and headings first, and then take short notes or highlight key insights. And then if you have more papers, you compare across papers in terms of the methods, assumptions, and sample sizes in order for you to get some ideas on what you should focus on. And then identify the contradictions and knowledge gaps, question back the logic. Do the conclusions really follow from the data? Sometimes, bila you baca conclusions, it does not really mirroring or reflecting what the data is saying. So kalau you jumpa artikel yang macam tu, you have to read properly again. Because sometimes the conclusions yang tak tally dengan data ataupun tak tally dengan results ni, you might question it. Look at the source or the funding source. Sometimes sebab dia adalah funded by the industries or the company, for example, they try to make the conclusions beautiful, although the results of the data does not say so. So kalau ada begitu, you should question it. And then watch for overclaims of correlation and causation. So correlation, causation, I think Janet, you have to remember, you have to somehow understand you got correlation, causation, in which, for example, I give you an example of okay, correlation is not causation. For example, ice cream sales and drowning incidents, for example, in summer. So you could have to observe the correlation. For example, during summer, both ice cream sales and also drowning incidents increase. So you are, if you are misinterpreting it, eating ice cream will causes drowning, which is not true. The reality is both ice cream sales and drowning incidents rise in the summer because of a third factor, because of the hot weather. So warm weather encourages people to buy ice cream to cool down, and warm weather also leads more people to swim, so increasing exposure to drowning risk. So although the correlation is that increased ice cream consumption also is correlated to the increased drowning incidents, but it is not the causation. The causation is that because of the hot summer or because of hot weather, it caused people to go to consume more ice creams, and it caused people to go and swim, and then the drowning incidents increase anyway. So the real cause factor is the seasonal effect, not the ice cream. Okay. And then you use the tech tools, Research Rabbit, Connected Papers, to visualize your literature, Mendeley, notes, EndNotes. AI summarizer sometimes is very useful. So I previously used Scholarly, so it is a subscribed one. But you have to always verify with the original text. And even Scholarly, sometimes there ada some kind of hallucination macam other AI summarizers juga lah, macam ChatGPT and also Gemini. So dia ada some degree of hallucination in which they interpret benda lain, but actually the article says different things. Okay, and then sometimes if you are doing systematic reviews, you can use a literature managers, for example, Ryan. So Ryan is a free systematic reviews literature managers for systematic reviews. So you can use that. So this is example of Research Rabbit, for example. Nanti you masukkan the articles. For this one, I use metformin type. So this article, so dia akan tunjukkan the illustration of how does that article, alpha ves ni, related to others. So if you click the bulat-bulat ni, nanti dia akan keluar the title of the article, so you can read. So this is how you connect one paper to another. So this is Research Rabbit, okay? Another one is Connected Papers, sama juga. So you type the article name. So for example here, cost effectiveness of surgical intervention for management of osteoarthritis, and then they akan show you the articles that citing the paper and also the paper cited. Okay, so this is how you look into the papers lah. Kalau katalah macam you have one dipanggil apa usually landmark papers. Okay, usually orang panggil landmark papers tu. So you try to masukkan that article title in that in connected paper, and then you look at the interacted or the connected papers in that you can try to use. Tengoklah you nak tengok tahun mana sebetulnya. So it's one way of searching for articles quickly. Okay. Okay, now this is what I said when we talk about literature metrics. Bila you baca articles sekali, you go highlight, ambil notes. So the second time, takkan you nak baca second time kan? Pening lah kalau katalah artikel tu 16 muka surat kan? Takkan you nak baca 2 kali. So what you do is that once you read the article, first time is for easy reading, and then the second time you start extracting the evidence or the data from the articles. You put in a literature matrix or evidence table. So your literature matrix or evidence table has to be a summary of what you are reading. So this is one of the examples that the literature matrix that I did when I do my PhD. So for this one, I would like to know the articles that they're looking into disinvestment in healthcare. So tengok pada different title, author year, purpose and objective of that paper, framework that they are using. So for this one, they guna thematic analysis, sample of that article. So yang ini dia guna sample HT agencies, design of the variables or instruments, selective review. So you basically summarize from the method here. So the first framework, sample and designs is actually you look into the method part. You ambil, you summarize it, put in your literature matrix. And then results part, so tak perlu ambil semua, tak perlu ambil 1, 4, 5 muka surat tu. You ambil mana yang penting saja to answer your research question. For example, I put in here, satu adalah ada 62 HT agencies, 58 websites, and then generally systematic research interviews are data collection analysis. And then I put number 2, most reviews will aim at making an overview. Number 3, 8 methodological projects. Number 4, Spain, more advanced. In UK, making choices spending wisely is MaxWise. And then 6, do not do databases. Conclusion, you take the conclusion. Baca dulu, kalau katalah macam tally dengan results, so then you take the conclusions, you put in the conclusion here. And then you look at the discussion. Is there any controversies or disagreement with other authors being described? So kalau tak ada controversy, then you put no controversy, disagreement, not discussed. Limitations, only focus on the European HTA. So limitations, you nak baca kat mana? Kat discussion. Most of the time, any peer review articles, I can say that 95% will discuss about their limitations. They will say that this study is without limitations. So limitation dia adalah dodeng-dodeng. dia buat only European HTA, ataupun they only look at the disinvestment in medical procedures ataupun medicine sahaja. Okay, and then that's what you do. And then implications for practice and research theory. So where do you find this? In the discussion and in the conclusion lah, basically. And then you put your notes juga. So for example, here I put my notes in red fonts here, possible research gap, implementation and monitoring of activities highlighted as important, but why many HTA agencies do not do it. So when you are reading the articles, you put in your notes juga. Okay, so this is one example. Another example is more straightforward, which is answering the PICO examples. So this is on when I did a drugs for metastatic renal carcinoma. You taruh title as usual, problem statement or research gap, objective, study design, context of country, PICO. Kalau you rasa PICO tu important for you, then you put PICO. Findings and conclusion. So for this one, because it is SRN network meta-analysis, so I want to capture all the statistical data that are being mentioned in the articles, because it is important for me to know the statistical significance. So I put everything here. Direct meta-analysis, ini yang dia dapat. Network meta-analysis, ini yang dia dapat. So daripada 1 year's overall survival, which is important in many cancer studies. So you put that. And then conclusion, you put the study punya conclusion first, and then your notes. Remember, you have to have your notes. Because you baca articles, mesti you kena berfikir kan, articles ni, kenapa dia tak address benda ni, you put your notes over there. Single agent therapies are favorable due to lesser side effects. Inferiority, I put opportunity, cost, and treaty managerial advisory, because I'm doing health economics as well. So I'm looking into the opportunity cost. So this is how you summarize your scientific articles, so that you don't have to read it twice or thrice or 4 times. Okay? So bila you nak refer balik later, you can only look at this literature matrix. Dah summarize everything that you want. Kalau ada benda yang you rasa tertinggal, you can always go back. Tapi this is good enough in order for you to get the important data and make your readings systematic and more informative. Okay? So before you ask kat mana I buat ni, I buat dalam Excel, because I love Excel in doing my literature matrix, sebab dia offers me a lot of freedom. Nak tambah page ke, sometimes you want to screenshot and then paste it in our Excel for us to refer later. So that's what I do. So I use Excel. So common mistakes, you read without a question in mind. So you read sekadar baca lah. Hari ni tak membaca lagi. So I pun nak baca lah. Supaya you tak ada question in mind. So try to avoid that. Over relying on abstract conclusion. So I know kalau kita tak sempat, kita terus ambil abstract, baca conclusion, itulah dia. Itulah apa yang artikel ni nak beritahu. Tidak sebenarnya. You miss a lot of information if you do that. Okay? And confusing correlation with causation. So that's what I'm explaining just now. And if you fail to cross-check data with other studies, for example, if you have these studies, you think, oh, this is a good study. And then you have another studies, which is almost similar, tapi different conclusion. So you should cross-check between the two. And have that curiosity in mind. Kenapa dia berbeza? Maybe because of the target population. Maybe because of the study duration berbeza menyebabkan dia punya outcome berbeza. As you read, you will start to understand and you will start to be familiar with the articles, and that will spark your questions better. And then you ignore the limitations of funding sources. But like I explained just now, the limitations is important because no research are perfect. Macam mana terror pun you buat research, it will not be a perfect one because mesti ada some limitations. Kalau perfect tu, too good to be true tu, kena check balik lah. Okay? So, the goal of reading a paper is not to understand every word, but to extract every idea that matters. So you have to read with purpose, not passively, just for the sake of reading it, because you tak baca paper apa-apa lagi minggu tu. No, have some question in mind, have some focus, develop your own structured approach. So what I show you is my approach. You can develop your own to suit yourself, to suit your preference, doesn't matter. as long as you have that idea on how to do that, and practice critical appraisal, not just summarizing. So any articles that you read, you can ada, okay, this is, at the end of the day, you boleh nak cakap lah, okay, this is good article. Why? Sebabnya all the checklist tu dia tick. Ataupun this is not quite a good article because dia tak address the biases, a lot of biases there in the articles, but dia tak address langsung dalam limitations dia. So it is not a good article. Okay? Yeah. That's my email. Kalau that's my common email lah. Hanifana@gmail, or if you prefer to use MOH, boleh juga moh.gov.my. So this is my university, Glasgow University. So I think I've done with my presentation. So kalau ada questions, boleh tanya lah. Okay, let me read the question dulu Ali ada apa-apa ke?
I was going to say thank you very much. So I was going to questions.
Alright. So mari kita baca lah. How about lit maths, doctor? Which one do you like best? Oh, I never used lit maths, tapi because I'm more familiar with connected papers and research rabbit lah. Because I think connected papers especially, dia link dengan banyak paper yang I think cool gila lah. So I prefer to use that. But I've never used lit maths before. Maybe you can share kalau if you are familiar with lit maths. Dayang. Okay. Is the Rabbit or connected paper website ni free? Okay. Rabbit Research Rabbit is adalah free. Tapi dia adalah macam kalau you nak donate apa-apa untuk dia orang buat kerja tu boleh lah. But connected paper, dia ada free version. But for free version, dia hanya boleh buat 5 illustrations in a month or in a week. I'm not sure. Tapi I tak ingat. Sebabnya I subscribe because I think subscribing to connected paper tu taklah mahal mana. I think it's about $10 per month. So that's why I subscribe dia terus. So I subscribe to 1 year, so it's easier. So you have an unlimited access to the literature punya illustrations. So Research Rabbit is free, but connected paper is free as well. Tapi limited, but you can subscribe it, and it's not that mahal lah. Do you use okay, Excel? I use Excel for my literature metrics. I used Words before, but over time I rasa macam tak best. So I use Excel. Would you say that you do your literature metric during your first pass or second pass? Second pass. First pass adalah nak baca santai-santai, dapatkan the idea. The second pass adalah when you start reading it properly, you look at the methodology properly, and then you ambil terus. Kalau you kata dalam methodology tu, you boleh tengok dah apa dia punya PICO, yang big P apa benda semua tu. So you start filling in your literature matrix during the second read. Most of the time. Kalau you terror, macam some of my itu, kalau you nak cepat, you can do on the first read kalau you familiar lah. But for a beginner, you do it on second read. Why we need to acknowledge the funding sources common? Okay, the funding sources. Kalau you guna CAS checklist ataupun you guna critical appraisal checklist, mesti dia akan tanya who are the funding sources? Kenapa funding sources ni penting? Some of the drugs being sponsored by the industries, sometimes dia ada conflict of interest. So you have to look at the conflict of interest. Dia punya funding sources tu for you to be cautious lah. But when you are doing the critical appraisal pun, memang one of the question adalah, have you look at the funding sources, ada tak possible conflict of interest? Because kenapa conflict of interest so penting ni? Kalau ada conflict of interest between the funders and also the researchers, you will start thinking, can I trust the data? Can I trust the results? Because they can always alter. I've seen some papers being altered ataupun dia reported differently. So, bila kita tengok pada result dia lain daripada apa supplementary table atau data yang dia provide tu. So ada miss kat situ. And it can happen to any high impact journal juga. I found it in BMJ before. So walaupun dia high impact journal Q1 ke apa ke, you still have to properly read it. Tak semestinya Q1 paper ataupun articles yang dalam high impact journal tu perfect ataupun of high quality. You still have to read it. Because your understanding matters compared to those who review. So orang yang review tu sometimes they review based on their punya understanding, but you are searching for the specific information that you need, and you will have more curiosity, more of the critical mind to think about. So baca juga properly, walaupun dia dekat articles yang high impact. So yeah, you have to acknowledge the funding sources. Okay. Thank you, Mira. Alia, how do you personally stay motivated when going through tons of research papers? Stay motivated. I usually do. Mula-mula tu memang it's quite difficult, but as time goes too, you started to think you are scholars. So when you are scholars, you have to know. So you have to read. In order for you to understand things, you have to read. Kalau you tak baca, you tak faham. And a lot of things takkan dapat dengan baca saja. So you have to discuss as well. How do I stay motivated? Is that I always think that I tak pandai. So, bila kita tak pandai ni, kita rasa rendah diri dan rasa nak baca lagi lah. So, true story, after I habis my PhD ni, I rasa hilang identity. So I tak baca sebanyak masa I buat PhD dulu lah. So, during my PhD time tu, I can read 10 articles in 1 week because that's what I do, because I really put my efforts. So when you want to, if to that day you want to read the articles, make sure 1 hour solid you read the articles. Kalau ada kawan ajak borak ke apa ke, nanti aku tengah baca artikel, so dia berhenti dulu. Kalau tidak, nanti dia datang borak, baru dia habis baca introduction, dia datang borak, you kena baca balik semula because you don't remember. So it's you have to have a specific a protected time for you to read the articles. So motivation, I think just remember that kita lagi banyak kita tahu sebenarnya, lagi banyak kita tak tahu sebenarnya. The more you read, actually you will realize that banyaknya benda I tak tahu. So keep on the motivation, and membaca ni kan bagus kan. So itulah. Alright, so Nazira, thank you. Okay, see you next session. Ocean. If my review article requires table, should I summarize them as you just did? What metrics should be recorded? Depends on how the objective or the direction of your articles. What I show you is literature metrics, but but actually daripada literature metrics, so you have to have a summary tables. You tak boleh masukkan literature metrics you dalam your articles for publication, because nanti you punya artikel jadi 100 muka surat. That's not an article, that's not a publication. So what you have to take is that from your literature metrics, you can tarik ataupun extract few important things in order for you to do a summary table. For example, katalah macam your systematic review tu, you dapat 10 articles. Takkan you nak masukkan 10 literature metrics dalam benda tu. You buat summary table of that 10 articles, and then just an important, janganlah elaborate lebih-lebih macam you buat literature metrics. Contohnya macam you buat the results tu, you just important results saja. Tak perlu masukkan semua. Because literature metric is for you. Summary table is for the readers. Okay? So the readers, you have to understand what you want the readers to know. Okay, if they want to know further, they can go back to the articles that you masukkan. So the what metric should be recorded depends on your articles. So I akan masukkan the name of the author, the year of publication, the objective ataupun the method, because I like methods. I really love methods. The research, so I will always put in methods, the important findings, and the conclusion. That's all. What do you think about using SciSpace to do lit metrics? SciSpace, maaf lah, saya tak pernah guna SciSpace. I'm a traditional one. I always use Excel to do my literature metrics. But if you are using SciSpace, any tools are welcome as long as you are comfortable and you extract the right information. Okay. I don't restrict anything. Katalah macam orang tu dia nak guna SciSpace ke ataupun anything other tools ke, please do. Sebabnya maybe you know better than me in terms of using the tools. For me, because I personally comfortable using Excel. Firdaus, normally how many papers can we read in 1 day? Depends. I can read 3 papers solid in 1 day. Tak tahu lah, setengah orang kata tak normal kan, tapi I rasa normal lah tu for me. For me normal lah, 3 tu normal lah, 5 pun I boleh read lah. So depends on your skills and depends on your focus lah. Jangan kata nak baca satu artikel tapi anak memanggil-manggil kan tidak habis. So sometimes instead of 1 week tu you baca 3 articles, satu artikel 3 minggu pula dah. So it depends on how focused you are, how your environments are, and be prepared lah kalau you nak baca articles, you have to have a conducive environment as well. How do you keep your focus on reading articles when rushing through for concept paper? Kalau you buat concept paper, you tak payah tengok benda-benda lain, methodology semua tu. Concept paper, you nak tengok results saja. You tak tengok results, you tengok discussion, link tu saja. So methodology, introduction tu tak payahlah baca kalau you buat concept paper yang laju-laju ni. I think knowing where to read and what to read is also a skill. So if you are in rush, I suggest you to look at the objectives. Method tu skim through saja sebab sometimes it's not important. Results, discussion pun tengok yang limitations and anything like that. Itulah sebab I'm a fast reader, so kalau macam nak baca discussion tu, I boleh baca sekejap dah. So you have to know where to look at. How to understand the variables IV and DV, how to make it as our topic and to look in the research paper. IV and DV ni lah sebab my thesis and my research project does not involve any IV or DV, because it's IV and DV ni usually you look at the conceptual papers, conceptual framework ataupun theoretical framework kan. So I can't advise you on that, but if you are interested, I can refer you to my friend yang memang buat research using IV and DV. Litmap saya S.5 masuk ChatGPT jadi any comments atau Litmap saya S.5 masuk ChatGPT dan literature. Okay, Nazmi Liana kata dia masuk ChatGPT dan literature generator boleh, tapi you have to check back because sometimes as we know ChatGPT ke Gemini ke, it's dia pemudah cara, but still you are the person with intellectual, with the experience and preliminary knowledge of what you want, so you have to check back. And for me, sebab I tengok dah banyak dah literature review being produced by ChatGPT, so I can detect. Recording stop. Recording stop. Apa ini borak-borak je. We'll send you the recording summary of the meeting shortly. What is Litmaps? I'm not sure, Mira. So I'm not using Litmaps. Maybe you can ask ChatGPT what is Litmaps. All right, I think I've answered everything. So Alia, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Hanin. You've delivered a session which is so kind and practical and really honestly motivating, okay, which is not easy for an overwhelming and difficult topic. So you've helped us search for understanding the case for search strategy, for efficient reading, critical thinking, and I think this is not something that I come across like easily, okay, and I've moved from feeling overwhelmed at the start of this session to actually feeling hopeful, inshallah, because you've given like really clear and practical strategies. My favorite part is actually about the search strategy tips on Booleans, truncations, and wildcards, and it's simple but really, really powerful. And I really love your reminder, do what is right from the beginning, not what is easy. It's not easy, but it's the right thing to do. We're really blessed to have your expertise, Dr. Hanin. You've had 15 years of experience in doing systematic reviews, so your insight tonight has really brought clarity to most of us who are in this confusing process. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone here for joining our Santai session. I hope that you've learned something useful that you can apply to your own research and your daily work. Just a reminder to everyone, as I mentioned at the start,